This is Richard Campbell from .NET Rocks, and I'm here with Don Kiely, and we were just doing the math. It's been 12 years since
At
we
least
met.
that,
Yeah.
way back into the last millennium.
And lots of conferences.
Right.
Yeah, it's always been about conferences. And you're originally, as I remember correctly, originally from California, moved to Alaska years and years ago. Is he still in Fairbanks?
Oh yeah. I've
Dude,
been there about
that's
15
really
years or
north.
so. It is. Yeah, in fact, for a while back in the mid-90s, I lived in Barrow, and I billed myself as the furthest north Visual Basic developer at the time.
That's awesome.
And nobody ever challenged me. So I went
for
with
obvious reasons.
Right.
And you do dog sledding?
Right.
You have a bunch of dogs, I think.
Yeah, we have 31 dogs.
31 dogs?
Right. Most of them are working dogs.
That's
Although we
nice.
have some older dogs that are retired and a few dogs that don't want to be sled dogs, which is fine. But I got hooked up with my partner, Carol Kleckner, and she got me involved in sled dog rescue.
In sled dog rescue?
Yeah,
okay.
because we have, Fairbanks is kind of the capital of sled dogging and mushing in the world.
Okay.
And so we have, unfortunately, a lot of dogs that get dumped at the shelter, because they
Once
don't
they're
work
no longer able to work.
Or, well, a lot of times it's because a dog is too fast or too slow for a team or doesn't work or doesn't get along with other dogs. And it turns out there's a lot of dogs that are dumped at the shelter that are perfectly good sled dogs, hardworking, interested in running, have fun running in various categories, but they just didn't work out on a particular person's team.
And so they just drop them at the shelter.
Dump them, yeah.
It's outrageous,
and
really.
Unfortunately, a dirty little secret is a lot of the big-time mushers will just shoot the dogs when they don't work, which is an ugly side of it, but
you don't even want to go there.
Yeah. So some friends several years ago started an organization called Second Chance League to take some of these dogs, evaluate them, and help them recover from whatever problems. Sometimes it's a medical problem. Other times it's just a training or an attitude kind of problem.
Right.
Foster the dog, and then we find a permanent home for them. And so it's really rewarding. And I'm currently president, and Carol is vice president. We have a great board of directors and we evaluate dogs and find great homes. It's
good for you,
really
man.
a cool
It's a cool
side of
project,
things,
and it's so much fun to do something meaningful outside of our industry. I mean, our industry can be all-consuming. But to get engaged in something like that and save some lives.
Right. Yeah.
Exciting
And
stuff.
as I can, of course, apply technologies to
of
some
course,
solutions and all. So yeah.
So I'm thinking there's probably a website.
There is. It's not one that I actually did. I'm maintaining at the moment, but I have great plans for it, of course.
Okay, give me the domain name.
It's secondchanceleague.org.
Second Chance League?
League,
right? Like a football league or
right.
secondchanceleague.org.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what are you doing here at DevConnections?
Well, I'm actually doing sessions in two of the conferences. I'm doing a session on Ajax 4.0 in the ASP.NET, and then in the SQL Server conference, I'm doing SQL Server Security, 2008 Security, and then something about tips and tricks in Management Studio.
Awesome.
Yeah, which is really fun because it's based on Visual Studio, but I find a lot of people aren't coming from a Visual Studio background, so they don't really know as much about those,
And
the
there's
fun
so
little
much
tips
stuff
and
hidden in
tricks.
Studio that people just don't know
it's
about.
a very complex tool.
Isn't Ajax 4.0 misnamed? Isn't it like the second version of the Ajax stack?
Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to tell because the way Microsoft slipstreams all these different technologies in and everything, but I think they wanted to coordinate it with the .NET Framework 4.0.
Because it is going to release with 4.0, which now gets it off that. Because I got the sense that it was Scott Guthrie did the keynote today, but Scott's the guy who was very much the architect of we're just going to release these modules and you can add them in or not add them in. And I always refer to it as Atlas still, the old code name, just to distinguish it from all the other Ajax stacks that are out there for ASP.NET.
And I sort of associate Atlas with more the server side Ajax, what Stephen Walther is calling AJA, A-J-A-H. For this, like the update panel. That's sort of Ajax because you're not doing a full post back.
It's asynchronous.
Yeah.
But you're still doing your rendering on the server and feeding HTTP.
Right.
Which
and
really,
you get the view state going back and forth and things like that. Yeah.
And it really sort of defeats a lot of the key advantages, I think, of Ajax.
Right.
I think the biggest advantage of the update panel approach is it's easy to implement on an existing site. You can retrofit in Ajax
You just
behaviors.
slap a bunch of controls within the update panel, and you have this Ajax experience.
And you have the effect, but not a lot of the benefits. So we still don't actually know what version Ajax 4.0 is, but are we changing that paradigm? Like, what's different? What's new?
Well, the biggest thing that Microsoft is really focusing on is they're really focusing on the pure Ajax on the client side.
Right.
And it's really kind of interesting because you look at some of the new features that they're introducing in 4.0, and it's mostly well, a lot of the biggest features are data binding.
Okay.
And it really reminds me of some of the stuff with Visual Basic 3.0.
Really? Way back.
In terms of when now you have these rich client applications that are able to interact directly with the databases.
Okay.
And so now you can write JavaScript that's supported by the Ajax library, the new libraries, that actually bind to some sort of data access method. And that's the reason for the ADO.NET data services,
right,
which makes a real easy way to bind to that. But you can access it all different kinds of data sources.
And again, that's data services was formerly codenamed Astoria.
Correct.
Right, and that's got a new rev coming as well in 4.0, so there's some good things happening there.
Right.
But really getting back to with Ajax 4.0, the real metaphor of Ajax, that I'm going to get the raw set essentially from the server, and I'm going to do the rendering on the client.
Correct. And mostly it's JSON, that a little bit tighter data format, so
right,
you're not getting all the formatted HTML back and forth like you do with the update panel.
And getting away from the view state.
Correct. Correct. You're not passing all this stuff back and forth.
That seemed to me to be the whammy that people were really getting hurt by as this thing scaled up, that there was so much view state traveling back and forth in this control.
Right.
So is it a new class of controls that are consuming this version of Ajax?
Yeah, the biggest one is the data view control, which is now a client-side control that's implemented completely within JavaScript. And that's what enables, well, there's really also the data context, which is new with the Preview 4, that manages, it's essentially a data source control, analogous to the SQL data source control on the server side, roughly analogous. And so the combination of those components, which are JavaScript, so the browser is running all this code and taking care of all the bindings, taking care of doing updates and inserts and so forth. The one thing that I've not delved in deeply enough, because the stuff is so new, it's all a preview at this point, is the security aspect of it.
Right. How are we protecting that data access? What kind of impersonation could we pull off here?
Right.
Are we going to end up all NTLM for it, like actually doing authentication every time?
Yeah, and that's a relatively reliable way that you can kind of count on that. But can I use this stuff from a public-facing internet application and be relatively secure? Or do I have to be really careful about what I expose through whatever data service I'm getting my data from and exposing it to?
Well, what kind of authentication options do we really have that are not going to be intrusive or ugly for that matter, that we can actually build it in?
Right.